and Aidan Johnson, the rest of the power squad, trained in yesterday morning's heat. Coach Ken Henkley said recruits Jimmy Toompas and Charlie Dixon were among the group training.
They fit in really well. Unfortunately, Jimmy's gone home a bit crook this morning, but that's to happen. But Charlie's had his second session out here amongst with the boys. It'll take a little bit longer, but he's getting to know his new teammates.
New draft picks Wayne Malera and Tom Doedee will be training soon. Now the FiveAA forecast staying cloudy this morning. Possible showers overnight, a top of 20 in store for today. Partly cloudy and 23 tomorrow. Saturday partly cloudy and 26. Sunny for Sunday and 27. Then mostly fine and sunny for Monday, a top of 31. More news as it happens on FiveAA.
Peter Godfrey, talking Adelaide on 1395 FiveAA.
Good morning, 5:06. Been cooling off a bit, just on 13 degrees in the city at the moment. Been a bit windy in town. Thankfully, the weather conditions have eased up a bit north of the city, up in the mid-north, where the fires have been going, with winds easing progressively over the night. They've had a few spots of rain there earlier, as the CFS was telling us earlier. But their current bushfire watch and act message from the CFS, details of that again. The Pinery Fire in the state's mid-north remains a going fire, with sporadic fire activity across the entire fire ground. Fire activity remains around many townships, including Owen, Hamley Bridge, Tarlee, Freeling, Wasleys, Kapunda, Greenock and surrounding areas. And there remains the potential for structures to be impacted due to ongoing ember attack across the whole of the area. Members of the public are asked to remain vigilant for the potential for further damage to property, and the fire remains uncontrolled at this time, with few control lines being in place. Trees affected by fire are a considerable risk, and people are to remain clear at all times. If members of the public are at immediate risk to being impacted by the fire, they should ring 000 and request assistance. Check and follow your bushfire survival plan. If your plan is to leave or you're not prepared, leave now. Only leave if the path is clear to a safe place. Well-prepared and actively defended homes can offer safety. You should not enter this area, as the roads may not be safe. Stay tuned to FiveAA on a battery-powered radio for updates. And if you'd like more information about bushfires, check the CFS website, cfs.sa.gov.au, or call the Bushfire Information Hotline 1300 362 361. And we'll keep you up to date on any further information regarding those fires, and no doubt as the sun comes up, a clearer picture will be seen on what's happening there. All right, let's head across the ditch, find out what's happening in New Zealand. Well, actually, we're going to sort of talk about a couple of things local in a roundabout way. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. Selwyn, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Peter. Very sorry to hear that the bushfires have been raging over there.
Yeah, well, it's
tough
just
time, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Sadly, 2 confirmed deaths, a third possible, but who knows what will be uncovered once the sun gets up and can evaluate the situation further. Extraordinary, though. 210 kilometre fire perimeter.
Wow.
Some of the figures of it.
Yeah. It's scary stuff, isn't it? And right on the back of the WA file.
Yeah, indeed. And so early in the bushfire season too, which is really worrying about what's ahead, particularly as we get into...
And comparatively, things are pretty tame over here. We haven't got any cyclones brewing. We haven't had any significant tornadoes or earthquakes or floods. So it's been a good season for inching towards summer. Got a high of about 23 degrees and looks like very light kind of drizzly rain is going to come through across Auckland City today.
Yeah, okay.
And then finding up again toward the weekend. Not too bad.
All right. Well, we're going to talk a bit about the GST and your experiences with it. There's this lot of discussion about changes to our GST, whether we broaden the base that it applies to, or increase the rate, or maybe a bit of both. But a story this week that came up on the news.com website that suggested we should look across the ditch to see the experience of you guys, and sort of suggesting that the New Zealand economy is faring a lot better than ours, and almost suggesting that maybe the GST played a part in that. But how do you see it? So your GST is broader and higher to start with. Yes.
Like in all things, isn't it? As they say, the devil's in the detail.
In the detail, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess New Zealand has had GST entrenched for so long. It was that perhaps it is a good comparison. We can kind of go through some of those points and just remember that the Labour government, the David Lange government, actually back in the 1986, brought GST in. At that time, our finance minister at the time was a guy called Roger Douglas, later to become a Sir, and what it did when GST came in, similar to Australia, I guess, it replaced a lot of sales taxes that were variable in their rates. Like,
same here.
It might be 10% on one thing. Cigarettes would have a different sales tax, and then, things like if you had anything made for a boat, for example, that accrued a 20% sales tax. So when GST came in, it ironed it all out at 10%.
Right.
But remember, in New Zealand, right across the board, nothing excluded. All goods and all services. All of them.
Everything. So
GST applied.
No exemptions of any sort.
No exemptions of any sort. And so that's from your lamb chop to your milk, to your bread, everything. Staple diet, GST whacked on top. So that when you people come over to New Zealand and visit, and you think, oh boy, that food's a bit expensive. That's probably why. But then. GST, Labour once again, just before it lost office in the late 1980s, it was in 1989, it increased the GST here in New Zealand from 10% to 12.5%.
So that's within a couple of years of it coming in initially? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so 1986 to 1989, and in came the GST increase to 12.5. At that time, the economy was in quite a lot of it was in having its challenges, put it that way. There was a lot of layoffs. People were losing their work. The job security was gone, and for many thousands, hundreds of thousands of New Zealanders. And the GST increase was seen to bring in a little bit more to the government at that time as income tax, which the country is still reliant on, obviously, was starting to edge down. So, the government was adjusting things. Also, the first wave at 10%, there's that big surge you guys probably noticed too. It's almost like inflationary pressures occurred when GST first came in. So I guess, if you whacked it up to 12.5 in the first instance, it was pretty hard for the country to absorb those kind of surges in revenue or taxation liabilities. Then national, it came, remember, it was in right through the 1990s. It didn't touch the GST at that stage, just kept it as is. National, under John Key, when he came in, they promised no tax increases, but they did put up, in the first term on October the 1st, 2010, they put GST up here from 12.5% to 15%.
Okay.
And that was certainly noticeable in a way. National, it needed to increase GST in an effort to balance the government's books due to reductions in income tax and business and corporate tax rates, as it promised in its campaigning to take office. So it was, income, business and corporate, those rates at a campaign saying we're going to drop those down, and then it was pressured, you're going to increase GST or put in a capital gains tax, and said no. John Key said no. When they came into office, of course, to actually balance the books, they had to put GST up.
Sorry, go on. No, go on.
I think looking at all of these things, what we have seen in New Zealand is a clear trend of trying to even out where the revenue comes from. So with income tax, while there's been a political mood to reduce income taxation down so that people have got more money in their back pocket, the GST is a transfer, if you like, from income-related taxation reliance into consumption.
Okay.
So when a country is doing well, when the domestic economy is going well, people have got money in their pockets to spend, mortgage interest rates are stable or low, then you've got money in the system to be able to spend, and GST has a good way of netting that. One other thing that has been good with GST too, and it's probably similar in Australia, is the black market. While there's a black market that thrives with people trying to avoid
so cash in hand type jobs and that kind of thing.
Cash in hand type jobs.
Yeah.
In the end, it does in areas that have a big cannabis economy, if you like, that type of thing. I guess money getting back into the system where it's spent in GST, there is a component of collecting money from that area.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the framework that New Zealand kind of sits on. That GST, just to wrap that up, it kind of works from a fiscal prudent kind of point of view, while the domestic consumption or private spending is high or progressing. But when people ease back their spending due to increased costs of living, mortgage interest rates increases, that type of thing, or the value of your home going up, and rates and all of that is tied to the capital value of the property. So, like in Auckland, where housing and same in Sydney, certainly that the housing costs have gone sky high as far as purchasing homes. So therefore, all people that own their homes and landlords are having to hike up those kind of things. It takes money out, so GST is under pressure in some areas. But in New Zealand, as mentioned, it applies to all goods and services. That's the big difference between New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah.
So you guys have got your exemption.
Yeah. When you had those two separate increases, so the jump to 12.5 and then to 15, was there any compensation for lower mid-income earners in the form of lower payroll taxes or lower income taxes, or increases in pension payments or anything like that? Was there any compensation provided to those?
No, not specifically targeted to that, Peter. People were left to sink or swim, really.
Okay.
What happened? There was an adjustment like what you're talking about in the mid-2000s. So remember that GST had been increased back in 1989 to 12.5. So in the 2000s, under the Labour-led government by Helen Clark, Finance Minister of Michael Cullen at the time, they brought in mid-term, around 2005, they brought in a thing called Working for Families. And what that did was there were tax credits where your taxation liability due to your household income or your income tax liabilities were channeled back to the family. Yeah. And that was seen to try and alleviate what was becoming an issue relating to disposable incomes in the home. But unfortunately, the wisdom in the Labour-led government at the time excluded those who were in the lowest area, and that's always been a problem for those that perhaps haven't met that the household income of around $25,000 and less, that they have really suffered in this country because of a number of things, but certainly increases to GST and certainly without entitlements to working for families. When the Prime Minister at the time, Helen Clark, was asked about their intentions in that area, she was saying this particular relief is for productive families, not those that are on the fringes. So there was no commitment to those on the very, very poor or low socioeconomic standing of the economy.
So making it quite difficult.
The big thing here that kind of the GST hangs on really is, and something that we always remember, that the New Zealand economy is vulnerable in that export area. Like Australia, New Zealand certainly is an export-led country. Its economy is determined very much on that. It has a current account deficit, for example, that is problematic, and a lot of that is due to the amount of money that New Zealanders privately and also government debt owes overseas entities. And that current account deficit in the past has ballooned up. Most of the banks in New Zealand, not all of them, but most of them are owned offshore, and a lot of them by Australian interests. So the indebtedness is a problem there, and also a lot of the social services like older aged care, Peter, they are located, or their head offices are overseas. So current account deficit's a problem here, but basically the whole thing is tied in really on a number of things. Agriculture, how the export's going in that. Horticulture, of course, that's all the apples and stuff. Viticulture, of course, would compete with you guys. Houses, obviously not as flash as your wine, but, in that area we compete. And, well, some would say, hey, Manning, come on now. Wine.
Yeah, I don't mind some of yours, yeah.
I don't know about Dave Penberthy. I don't think he likes the New Zealand swamp thing in the market over here with the wines. But, and all of those kind of things, the point being that if the commodity prices in milk, for example, have been under pressure the last 2 years, only overnight and yesterday, Fonterra, its shareholders, Fonterra is the dairy export giant, it was under pressure from its shareholders to actually get itself sorted so that there's more of a return to the farmers. Farm gate prices have been, for most of the last 12 months, below what it costs to actually produce milk. So those regional economies in New Zealand have been suffering. There's almost a regional recession in some areas around the lack of money coming back into those regions because the exports are failing. Now, while I raised that about GST, it's all a big equation. If there was that question that you put to me in the email, Peter, about is New Zealand in better shape because of or in spite of GST, you can't give a straight answer.
No.
It's like politicians can't give a straight answer. But if you're rounding it all up, New Zealand's experience is that it was told by our politicians it was too complex to take GST off food, but Australia has shown it is possible and sustainable to exclude food, for example. And looking back here as a Kiwi, and you look across to Australia, that you've been able to manage that regime in that way. If your country, it seems to me, I'm just me speaking here, Peter, but if it's mindful of maintaining that exclusion, then it would maintain what looks like from this side of the ditch anyway, that ethic of ensuring low and middle income Australians are not so disadvantaged by any increases in GST, because in New Zealand the experience is that the middle incomes and low incomes have been affected poorly by that.
Yeah,
and the dangers, just to underscore, of GST is if the exports aren't working and the domestic economy is suffering and there are increases or inflationary pressures in certain ways, then GST as a consumption tax can have can leave government short. And so what they do then, they borrow like the John Key government did in massive amounts through the global financial crisis, huge mountains of government debt now in this country that generations will have to pay off, or major slashes to government spending in health, education, business stimulus, etc., etc.
Plenty of food for thought there as we sort of go through that whole process. We're trying to weigh it all up. So good to get your experience on that. So we do need to take a break. We'll come back in a moment because we're going to be invaded by Kiwis this weekend here in Adelaide. For the cricket, we'll talk about that in a moment with you, Selwyn. Selwyn Manning with us, editor of EveningReport.nz.
5AA News.
Bushfires are burning around the state, both north and south of Adelaide.
We'll cross now to the Premier of South Australia, Jay Weatherer, who's giving a press conference.
Sadly, I can confirm 2 deaths so far, with unconfirmed reports of a third.
The circumstances there, one found in a paddock, another in a car, burnt-out car near Freeling, and a possible third person who has hit a tree, it appears, in a car.
The total perimeter of the fire is 211 kilometres.
1395, Adelaide's 5AA.
From today, all of Channel 9 shows are now available in HD on Channel 90. To make sure you get this new channel, you will need to retune your TV now. 9HD, now available on Channel 90.
In the changing world of real estate, it is important to stay up to date with current legislation. And as a landlord, you need to be aware of your rights and responsibilities. At Toop & Toop, our professional and caring team take the pressure off the unforeseen situations. Toop & Toop specialise in protecting your asset. To find out how we can assist you, talk to one of the Toop team today. Call 8362 8888, that's 8362 8888, or go to toop.com.au.
If the food is amazing, if the beer is icy cold, if there's something extra special about the service, you're standing in a Barreau Hotel. Check out the Albion Hotel Steak Night on Thursday nights. Grab a rump steak, $15.90, a porterhouse for $16.90, and a delicious counter T-bone, only $17.90. All with your choice of sauce and their delicious salad and vegetable bar. For real value, check out the Albion Hotel, Churchill Road, Kilburn, opposite Costco. Part of the Barreau Hotel Group.
The mad rush has begun. And do you have all your Christmas gifts yet? Stuck for ideas for your mum or dad? How about a Care Alert smart dialer? One push on the uniquely designed pendant and the Care Alert can notify up to 5 people of an emergency. Even 000 can be called and no monitoring fees ever. Order now and receive a free blood pressure monitor worth $50. Go to carealert.com.au and use the promo word Christmas or call 1300 75 85 95.
Time for another top deal from Nordic Honda, top of Glen Osmond Road. For this month only, you can receive an amazing deal from Nordic Honda on any new Honda vehicle. Purchase any new Honda vehicle and receive 3 years scheduled service free. Top that, 3 years scheduled service free, exclusive to Nordic Honda. Ask the team about 5-year extended warranties on all new Hondas and drive away today.
Another top deal from the top of Glen Osmond Road. Nordic Honda.
Nordic Honda.
They're tops.
Peter Godfrey on 1395, Adelaide's 5AA.
And we're talking with Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. From the GST to the cricket this weekend, starting tomorrow, Friday, the day-night match, Australia and New Zealand. Now, it's been I don't know if you were, Saturday night we had AC/DC playing live here in Adelaide on Adelaide Oval. So there's been an amazing turnaround and preparation going on at the Oval to get the pitch all up to scratch.
Quite a in the New Zealand Herald, Peter, there was a little bit of concern over that and whether or not the pitch was going to actually be tidied up in time. Certainly, the New Zealand Herald was focusing right in on that. That was on Tuesday. One of its reports there. But as we understand it, the pitch is a really, really good one. Is that correct for bowlers in particular?
That's what I've heard. The head curator, Damien Hoff, says it's sort of a bit more of a grassy sort of field that he's doing, saying wanted to leave a bit of grass on it, sort of trying to replicate what they had for a Sheffield Shield match a little while ago that was given the thumbs up pretty much by everyone. So, but yeah, they seem to be. He seems pretty confident that it'll be pretty good. Yeah.
Well, remembering back at both the last two tests up at the Gabba and also across at the Wacker, that they were both seen to be batters' wickets, and huge scores in that draw at the Wacker, wasn't it? And, there were some really, really great demonstrations of batting, for sure. But I guess when you look at it, there's a win to Australia at the Gabba and there's a draw at the Wacker. Now, in New Zealand, the mood is, if we can hold you guys back to a bit of a stalemate here, if we can get a win in the in this particular game, then that's a loss. The series lost to Australia because the hope is, so that's the way they're kind of spinning it over this side of the ditch.
Okay.
Even though it would be officially it would be seen as an even deal, but with it coming down to this, with it being a bowler's wicket, well, one can expect a result one way or the other, can't you? The expectation would be that it's not going to be a draw. If this is a bowler's wicket, well, it's going to have some action in it, and there'll be something to behold. This pink ball idea too, that's had a lot of coverage over here.
Oh, it has indeed. A lot of controversy. Should it be used? Should it not be used? Yeah.
And also with the day-nighter. So there's been a lot of reportage about that. And is this the precursor, the day-nighter type test? Is that the precursor to reducing the test down from 5 days to 4? There's been quite a lot of talk about that, and a lot of kind of nodding and a lot of head shaking over it, over this side of the ditch. But as we understand it too, that you've got a couple of injuries that might be there, or one in particular with a thumb injury. Warner, isn't it? Yep. And we have, to equal that out, one of our strike bowlers, Mr. Bolt, that he's got a bit of a twinge in his back. So we'll have to kind of see how that all pans out, of course. But certainly the Kiwis are the underdogs, as they always are in cricket, Peter. You guys, I know what it feels like when you guys are playing the All Blacks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, turning the tables somewhat.
Turning the tables. You guys are seen as the absolute rock stars of this Test cricket, and rightfully so, when you see what happened to the Kiwis up there in the Gabba. And if we can help, perhaps if we can help Australia take on England again next time and actually do the English, and then we've done our job.
Fair enough. Well, it should be good because apparently it's either sold out or very close to being sold out for the weekend. So
Fantastic.
That's a good solid 50-odd thousand or thereabouts in the ground. That's going to make for a great atmosphere, I think, as well for people. So
SA people should be proud. I'd imagine would be very proud of that and point up to Queensland and say we can fill our stadiums.
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't you?
Yeah. There won't be all those vacant. Empty chairs on the TV footage, that's for sure here. So,
and as you always say, Peter, let the best team win.
Exactly right. We'll look forward to that, and no doubt we'll talk a bit about it next week. Selwyn, good to talk to you. Thanks for your time, and have a great week. We'll catch you next week.
All the best.
Thanks, Selwyn. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. It's 5:30.
This is Adelaide's 5AA.
Partly cloudy and 20 today. It's 5:30. I'm Ann Stone. It's been a long night for CFS crews continuing to fight a major bushfire near Kapunda in the state's mid-north. 2 people have been confirmed killed, with fears of a third, and 3 people who were fighting the fires have been taken to hospital with serious burns. At least 2 homes have been destroyed, along with sheds, crops and livestock. But Phil McDonough from the CFS says crews have made some significant progress overnight.
We've seen very little fire growth itself. There's still a little bit of fire activity within the fire ground itself. There are unburnt islands within the fire perimeter that are still flaring up from time to time, but we've been concentrating on consolidating the fire edge and preventing it spreading any further.
Premier Jay Weatherill says our local crews will be receiving help from interstate today.
Assistance has been offered from many jurisdictions. I've spoken personally to the Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, who's offered every assistance, including 8 strike teams of firefighters who are due to arrive. This amounts to 200 firefighters and about 50 appliances.
And bushfire relief centres have been busy overnight. They've been set up at the Balaclava Racecourse and the Gawler Recreation and Sports Centre, providing shelter, food and water to those who fled their homes. The Russian pilot who survived after his plane was shot down by Turkey on the Syrian border says he couldn't have strayed into Turkish airspace and vows he was given no warning before they opened fire. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg reports.
There is relief here that one pilot has survived, but there is anger too. In Moscow, a crowd pelted the Turkish embassy with eggs and stones. Today, Russia condemned the shooting down of the bomber as a deliberate, planned act, an ambush. Turkey maintains the Russian aircraft violated its airspace and ignored 10 warnings. But there are signs that Moscow does not wish to escalate this crisis.
The United States says the deadly airstrike last month on a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan was caused primarily by human error. And the US commander in Afghanistan has promised disciplinary action. 30 people died in the attack on Kunduz, which sparked an avalanche of global condemnation and forced the hospital to close. Mental health support systems in Australia are being streamlined, giving people just one number to remember to get help. The Prime Minister will today unveil a shake-up of the mental health system after a major review made 25 recommendations. And Health Minister Susan Lee says it's all about making it easier for sufferers.
This one phone number is a key part of our response to improving and reforming mental health across Australia.
Pope Francis has arrived in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, on the first leg of a landmark trip to Africa. Huge crowds greeted the pontiff at the airport, along with Kenya's president, and a red carpet welcome. The Pope will also visit Uganda and the troubled Central African Republic over the next 6 days. Now turning to sport, and anticipation is building to see how the pink ball will fare in Australia's day-night cricket test against New Zealand, starting tomorrow at the Adelaide Oval. The Aussie squad has been training under lights to get accustomed to the conditions, and batsman Adam Voges says the match is likely to be a spectacle.
Still that little bit of an unknown about how things are going to play out, I guess, but I think from the crowd sales, they're expecting some big crowds, particularly the first 3 days.
Former Western Bulldog